Gold Advanced, new 2019 edition, course book. Unit 1, Speaking and Use of English Focus, Activity 2.
Good morning. My name is Irene and this is my colleague Deborah. And your names are?
Karl Weber.
Elena Calvi.
Can I have your mark sheets, please? Thank you. First of all, we'd like to know something about you. Where are you from, Karl?
I'm German. I live just outside Berlin now, but I grew up in the center of the city.
And Eleanor?
Italy.
What do you do there, Eleanor?
I work in a hotel.
Karl, what do you like most about the area where you grew up?
Well, there are so many things really, but I suppose the one that really stands out for me is living so close to a great city like Berlin.
Eleanor, who has more influence on your life, your friends or your family?
My family.
Why?
I don't know, really. They just do.
Unit 1, Grammar Focus, Activity 2.
For years, I've been telling all my friends that I wanted to get away from the hustle and bustle of London to somewhere quiet and peaceful. What I had in mind was a little cottage near the sea. Well, they do say you shouldn't wish too hard or your wish just might come true, and that's exactly what happened. Out of the blue, I was offered a job managing a hotel in a remote part of Ireland. Suddenly, it seemed to me that I had, in fact, always been a real city person who could negotiate the complexities of urban life, the crowded underground trains, the roar of traffic, the millions of people, all of it, and without blinking. But the job offer was too good to turn down, and a few weeks later, I found myself in Castletownbere. In less than 24 hours, I'd gone from a huge metropolis with a population of over 8 million to a quaint fishing village with barely 800 inhabitants. It was a huge change. By the beginning of next month, I will have been living here for exactly a year. I've been looking back, retracing my steps, and coming to understand just how great a change it has actually been. I've got to know almost all of those 800 people and found a real sense of belonging, though I've also occasionally longed for the anonymity of city life. I've spent hours exploring the glorious countryside by bicycle and on foot, and have discovered a taste for silence and solitude I didn't know I had. I've also had great fun managing the hotel and getting to know some of its rather eccentric regular guests. By the time the first year comes to an end, almost all my London friends will have been here to stay, and they love it almost as much as I do. Of course, there are many things I miss, though in the end, the crowded underground trains and the noisy London traffic I can easily do without.
Unit 1, Listening Focus, Activity 2. Speaker 1.
I seemed to be always giving or throwing away things I'd bought but wasn't using. The only way to stop the cycle was to move into a much smaller place and really take downsizing and simplifying my life more seriously. It's going well so far, though it's also been a challenge. There's less and less clutter, and I now feel that my thinking is much clearer too. I spend more time outside, of course, because you can feel pretty hemmed in such a small space. But there are some great places to walk literally outside my back door, and I can even see the sea through my kitchen window, which is a real bonus. I don't think I could live here without that.
Speaker 2.
As soon as the prize money was in the bank, I went out and bought this extraordinary 17th century mansion. It was supposed to be my dream home, but in some ways it's turned out to be a complete nightmare. I had no idea how edgy I was going to feel in a large and very ancient house. I have to be careful not to watch horror films on TV because I start to imagine every creak and groan from the rafters is actually someone lurking in one of the other rooms. Of course, it's glorious to have so much space. I've been able to accept my grandfather's gift of a grand piano because I've actually got somewhere to put it. Next step will be learning to play it.
Speaker 3.
I came to live in this part of town almost 20 years ago when I started university. My first home, if you can call it that, was a hall of residence just round the corner, and then I lived in a series of shared flats. Finally, I had enough money in the bank to get a mortgage and buy this place. I couldn't be happier living right in the centre of the city like this. Apart from the usual shops, there's a cinema, some rather pleasant cafes, and even a really great arts centre round the corner. If I lived out of town, I know I'd really miss all that. I must admit, I'm walled in by other buildings on all sides, and that gets to me sometimes, but it really doesn't outweigh the many advantages of inner city living.
Speaker 4.
I tried to find something a bit bigger, but everything I looked at was way outside my price range, so I had to take this. I've had to leave a lot of my stuff at my parents' place. Perhaps one day I'll have enough room for more than a sofa bed and a desk. I tend to go out to eat, even for breakfast. The kitchenette is so tiny there's barely room to chop a carrot, and it's difficult to get rid of the cooking smells afterward. There are loads of cafes on this street, and a lot of the people from round here hang out there in the mornings, so I've got to know them and find it to be a really vibrant neighbourhood. That's a real plus for someone living alone like me.
Speaker 5.
Where my partner and I lived before, there were rooms we barely used, particularly after the children had all left home. That's one of the reasons I wanted to move. It's not at all cramped here, but there's no excess either. I'm in and out of all the rooms every day. We both work from home, and so we've each claimed one of the spare bedrooms as an office. It's great to have an office of my own, though it's right next to the room our neighbour Tom has set up as a gym, and I can hear him working out. It reminds me that I'm living in close proximity to other people, but it's sometimes a bit irritating.
Unit 1. Writing Focus. Activity 1.
I like to think I know most of my neighbours, but perhaps I could get to know more of them, or get to know the ones I do know a bit better. There is a neighbourhood association, and they hold all sorts of social events like barbecues and picnics, and even run courses of various kinds, like yoga and language classes. But I somehow haven't managed to get involved in anything they offer apart from the annual street party, which is really great. I read something interesting the other day that made me think. I read that the average American moves more than 10 times in a lifetime. That sounds like a lot to me, but I bet if you move so often, you don't have much of a chance to get to know your neighbours at all. Apparently that's the case, so someone has come up with the bright idea of creating an online forum so that neighbours can get to know each other. The publicity says it's like a town square where people can go to voice opinions and needs and even offer things for sale. It's a kind of social networking site just for your neighbourhood. If it sounds a bit far-fetched to you for people to have to go online to get to know their neighbours, you might be surprised to hear how successful it has been. Apparently, in one small town where the forum was launched, almost 2/3 of the town's inhabitants had posted after the end of the first year. Perhaps, if there was a forum like this for my neighbourhood, more busy people like me might get involved. Personally, I'd like to see a local marketplace with stalls offering goods and services. I love markets, and the idea of seeing what my neighbours have to offer really appeals to me.